I imagine a lot of the people that watch my channel have either got projects of their own or they're perhaps thinking about getting a project of their own. And one thing that I didn't realise when I first started doing this was how difficult it is to get that vehicle registered with the DVLA if it's been stood for a long time. So I thought I'd have a bit of a quick chat with you about it. And hopefully this might be able to help somebody who's either importing a bike if they're not from Britain, and they're importing one from Britain, to understand what the paperwork is. So I'll be explaining in slightly more detail than people from the UK probably need. And for any UK people, it will help you understand what you need to do if you are registering a vehicle that's been off the road for a while. So the ideal scenario is you buy a vehicle, in my case normally mopeds, and the vehicle comes with its paperwork, which is called a V5 document. Now what you do is, as you buy the vehicle, you fill in the green slip on the right hand side, and the person that's selling you the vehicle then sends that off to the DVLA, who are basically like a centralised government agency that keeps all the records on drivers and vehicles in Britain. It's sort of like the DMV in America, except that it's national instead of localised, because theirs is all local government run basically. So the previous owner sends the slip off to the DVLA. Now the reason it's a previous owner is because that way he knows he's no longer liable for that vehicle. So he's not going to get any parking tickets or anything from it, and he gets a letter from the DVLA telling him that he no longer owns the vehicle on their records, and you as the buyer get your new V5 sent through the post. So that's all fine and dandy, and there's a couple of previous generations of the V5. I've got here a blue V5 from I think the 90s. They then became basically a blue version of the current one, which is red. But they had to change them to red because I think it was in 2004 a load of blank V5s got stolen from the DVLA, and they were worried about people using them to clone vehicles and things like that, so they changed the colour, but it's more or less the same as the previous one, and this is the version before that, which is the 90s one. I've also got this one, which is a buff logbook, denoted by the colour, and yeah, it's that's from back in the days before the DVLA, when it was local government run. So this one is from Surrey, and the chap that owned it before me was from Cobham in Surrey, and he was the first owner, and the previous owner, as it says there, was a company in Tooting. With these older versions of logbooks, what you need to do, well, what I've done in the past is photocopy the original, fill in the photocopy, and then send the photocopy and the original to the DVLA. That way you can normally, but not always, I've had them sent back a couple of times, you can normally get around defacing your original document. And if you include an envelope with a stamp on it and your address, and a note asking for them to send it back to you, they're generally fine with that, and they don't mind, because they then get to use your envelope rather than pay for postage when they send the documents and the other stuff back for you, or whatever letter they're going to send as a reply. So that's easy enough. We'll be returning to this buff logbook in a minute, because this particular one didn't quite go right, so we'll go there soon. The next best thing is if you don't have any documents but you do know the number plate. Now, if it's got a number plate on it, that's fine. If it's got an old tax disc on it, that's fine. But none of this matters if that number plate isn't on the DVLA website, on their database. So just to give you a quick example, here I am on eBay, and oh look, a nice bike. I can't afford it, but let's pretend I can. And so in this picture you can see the number plate, and it's legible. So that's great. So we're going to search for DVLA vehicle check on Google, and the DVLA website comes up, and all you need is the number plate and the make of the vehicle, and all this information comes. Now, if they don't have it on their database, it'll literally just say no vehicle records held or something similar to that. So this one, they have it on their database, which means that you could buy this vehicle and fill in a V62 form, which is very simple. Again, it's just like things like frame number, engine number, your address, vehicle reg, colour, and it costs £25. You have to include a cheque with it, but they will send you a letter saying, brilliant, I'll do your V5 now then, basically. They have, in the last few months, back end of 2016, started sending inspectors out to inspect vehicles. It's not every case, I don't think, but if they're a bit suspicious because it's been off the road for a long time, then that's what they do. And the purple Puch Maxi I'm currently doing the tank out on is due to be inspected, which is why I'm pressing ahead with that one. For the simple reason that it needs to be in working order for them to be able to check it. I don't think it needs to be MOT-able, but it needs to be in working order, and they're checking the identity of the bike, checking that it's mostly original. There's 4 things. I think it's engine, rear swing arm, front forks, and something else I can't remember, and 2 of those have got to be, at least 2 of those have got to be original, otherwise it's no longer entitled to its own old identity. So anyway, you can also do an MOT check, and it'll tell you, this is for my car, it'll tell you the MOTs, whether it's passed or failed, and what it's failed on for the last, I think it's 10 years, and it'll, if we scroll down here, look, so yeah, it's got all these MOTs on it, and you can tell exactly what's wrong with it, what was wrong with it, what's been fixed on it, so that's quite handy as well. I did this on my Honda, and that's how I knew what needed to be fixed ready for the next MOT, because it had failed its last MOT. They hadn't bothered retesting it, so it was the same problems that were with it, along with the fact it no longer ran and a few other bits. But it gives you an idea of what it might fail on this time. Now, where it gets tricky is when you don't know the reg number of the vehicle. So you've bought your vehicle and you don't know the number plate of it, you have to prove the age of it. Now, there's 2 ways you can do that. The first one, which is the easiest, is nip over to the East Anglian Cycle Motor Club. They're the cheapest that I know of, or another club. You don't actually have to be a member of the EACC as well, which is quite handy, but most other clubs you do have to be a member, and you can get them to do you a dating certificate, which will be, for the EACC, it's in the region of £10, I think, and that will basically just be a piece of paper that says we are a recognised authority on this, and it's roughly this age, or well, exactly this age, and then the DVLA will take that, issue you with an age-related number plate, and you're away. The other option is to actually get in touch with the local authority, if it's a really old bike, that registered it. So if it would have had a buff logbook, I think it's up to the early 70s, I think, it might actually be in the vehicle records in the archive office of that particular local borough, if you can work out where it was registered, which you can do by looking up the old number plate sequences and see what the last few letters say. But that's a whole other video. I might go into number plates at some point if this doesn't bore the arse off you too much. So you've got your documentation either from the owners club or from a local authority where the bike was originally registered that tells you the age of the vehicle, and the DVLA will accept that as proof. So then you need to fill in a V55 form, which most of it isn't relevant to older vehicles. A lot of it's about what they call type approval, which is things like vehicles made after a certain, for example, vehicles after 1986 have to have indicators. It's that sort of thing, but for newer things like ABS and stuff. I don't think it was around in the 80s. But anyway, a lot of it is irrelevant. So you just fill in the bits you need to, and then you send that off, and I think it costs 90 quid or something like that. It's quite a lot more money anyway. And they will issue you with your V5. So I said I'd return back to the buff logbook. This was for my Suzuki U50, which I bought fully expecting to be able to keep the number plate on it because it had the original documents with it, and it's got quite a short snappy number plate, XLY45G, and it had the original actual plate on there, which I love, because I love keeping the original number plates wherever possible, because I think they just look the part and a lot better than a newer yellow and black one or whatever. So I sent it off, filled in, well, with a filled in copy, and I got a letter back saying, can we have some pictures of the bike please? which I thought was a bit weird, because you don't normally get that when you've actually got an old document. So anyway, I duly sent them some pictures of the bike. They wanted rubbings of the frame number and the engine number and things as well, so I did that. And it took them about a month to process it, and when it came back, it was for a completely different bike that happened to share the same frame number. Now, that might have happened because when it was originally inputted into their database, this other bike, there may have been other characters like dashes or things in the frame number, and they weren't inputted. So effectively it had the same frame number as my bike, except it was 10 years younger and it was bright orange and the engine number didn't match. And it had a suffix V-reg number plate, so it was 1979. So I got in contact with the DVLA, and they weren't having any of it, basically. They just said, well, if you don't like it, send us the V5 back. So what I ended up doing was getting in touch with Andrew from the EACC, and he's the dating certificate guy. And yeah, he got in touch with the DVLA for me and said, this is definitely wrong. I sent my forms back in, and after a while they sent me the proper V5. So things do go wrong sometimes, and they kind of need proof of everything, the DVLA, which is fair enough, because it would be very easy for people to be cloning vehicles and things like that. But it is possible to get around it. You just need somebody that they trust to tell them the truth that you know, basically. So yeah, a happy ending on that one, so I was quite pleased about that. Yeah, so I hope I've not bored you too much. If you have got any questions regarding registering things, feel free to put them in the comments below. I may or may not be able to answer them. If it's anything that I've got experience in, I'd gladly answer them though. Yeah, I don't mind helping people out at all. So yeah, I hope you liked this video. I hope it wasn't too boring, and I'll come back to you soon with something a bit more interesting.